Have you ever tried discussing mental health with an East Asian parent or just your feelings in general? I'm guessing that your parents probably gave you a lecture about how you need to be grateful instead of engaging in constructive discussion, or that your feelings of anxiety are because you spent too much time on the computer. Mental health is still a Western concept, as psychiatry was only introduced to East Asia in the 19th century. However, Western psychiatric templates and mentality cannot be applied universally. We need to understand a society's unique historical and cultural context in order to develop a specified approach. Japanese society is historically rooted from a blend of Buddhism, Confucianism, and Shinto, which greatly shape the society's worldviews and daily lives today. According to these schools of thought, your body's activities, including mental health, are under the control of the mind. Emotions grow from the mind. If there is an excess of emotions, mania for example, then that is a consequence of ignorance and a lack of self-discipline. We need to appear as our best possible self in order to maintain the harmony of society. The stigma has contributed to the lack of mental health promotion in Japan and prevents people from seeking support. Japan is one of the most homogeneous countries in the world with strong collectivist values. One of these cultural concepts is called wa, which means harmony. This mindset emphasizes minimizing conflict and prioritizing the group's well-being over individual desires or expressions. In the West, it's acceptable to discuss and even joke about mental health, trauma, and medical treatment. While in Japan, and really East Asia in general, it might be inappropriate to discuss and display negative emotions. It's peculiar to seemingly brag about how many mental illnesses and prescriptions you have. As a kid, I was told not to cry because it makes everyone else uncomfortable by dampening the mood. Suppressing emotions maintains harmony and avoids burdening others with negative energy. But the pressure to endure struggles in silence and conform to societal expectations can affect mental health and lead to severe outcomes. Not only can emotional stress lead to depression and anxiety, but also to physical problems like heart disease. Another cultural instinct is honne and tatemae, which refer to an individual's true feelings and their facade that is presented to society. People are expected to act pleasant and avoid conflict to maintain social harmony in every situation, such as customer service, corporate office interactions, and even friendships. Most Japanese people can navigate this dissonance, but it's also something that people struggle with, especially if they're unfamiliar with the culture or come from an opposing one. To most Japanese people, it's normal and polite to present a mask. To some non-Japanese people, it's perceived as fake and unauthentic. The last cultural concept I want to discuss is called gamen, which emphasizes endurance, perseverance, and self-control in the face of adversity. Mental health is already perceived as something that can be controlled. Therefore, seeking help for psychological issues may be perceived as a sign of weakness or an inability to cope with challenges. People may instead mask their psychological problem as a physical problem, such as disguising anxiety as chest pain, which is more socially acceptable to discuss. Gamen also has its strengths. It manifests patience and tolerance, which is how Japanese people are able to maintain their facade without internal tension. There's a popular phrase that goes shikatakanai, which literally translates to "it can't be helped." In other words, it is what it is. The bubble economy of Japan was a period of rapid economic growth and speculative investment during the late 1980s. When the bubble burst in the 90s, a group of young people lost their jobs or were unable to find unemployment after graduation. The feelings of failure and shame and lack of financial security caused so much psychological distress that some people simply withdrew from society and isolated themselves in their parents' home. This phenomenon is known as hikikomori. Some people withdraw for a few months, but others isolate for life. In May 2019, a 51-year-old unemployed hikikomori attacked a group of people with a knife in a suburb of Tokyo. People who display mental illness were already seen as dangerous and unpredictable, but this incident further vilified unemployed middle-aged people living with their parents. After this fatal knife attack, the Abe government announced a plan to increase employment for the lost generation. Employers are hesitant to hire hikikomori and society will not accept them, so they fall further into depression and isolation. Their family also gets dragged into depression because they have to deal with the negative energy and have no social support due to the stigma. It's a vicious cycle where the family refuses to seek treatment for the child, so the child continues to rely on the parents well into their 50s. But what will happen when their parents pass away? There are support centers for hikikomori, but they only offer encouragement. They don't have specialists who can address their root psychological issues. The problem is far beyond unemployment. I have a whole video dedicated to Japanese work culture here, but let's discuss the impact of the workplace on mental health. Karoshi is a Japanese term that translates to death from overwork. In a traditional corporate office, you're expected to respect and obey your superiors regardless of how they treat you. Consistent overtime, high expectations, poor work-life balance, and a verbally abusive boss would drive anyone crazy. Customer service representatives or workers in hospitality also have to deal with hostile guests with a smile on their face, and you're expected to endure the pressure without complaint because gamen. So sadly, men or women drink alcohol to cope with the stress or release their frustrations onto their partner. And in the worst case scenario, they jump in front of the Chua line. According to the Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare, the number of work-induced mental health disorders hit a record high of 883 cases this year. More and more mental health problems are being reported, but it's also a sign that people are becoming more comfortable with acknowledging their work-related stress. So what is the Japanese government doing to address mental health? During the COVID pandemic, the country's borders were closed off to foreigners for more than 2 years, and most people voluntarily isolated at home. To combat social withdrawal and increasing hikikomori, the government hired their first Minister of Loneliness in April 2021. Truthfully, I could not find any notable accomplishments from this hire. He held this position for only 8 months, offered a few statements to the media, and I guess the government never spoke of this role again. It was criticized as just a facade. People wondered why the government ignored the hikikomori problem for 30 years until social isolation problems rose during the pandemic. As a result, Japan enacted a law to prevent loneliness and isolation on April 1st of this year. It obliges local governments to set up regional councils made up of groups that offer help to people suffering from social isolation. They are essentially support groups led by social workers. These are some quotes by Japanese people who explained that they felt lonely due to family household duties or the stress from work and school. In 2018, Parliament enacted the Work Reform Bill, which addressed issues related to overtime hours and wage gaps. A government white paper in 2023 revealed that there was correlation between overtime work and mental health concerns. With a culture of karoshi, people do understand that many cases of depression and anxiety stem from the stress of work, and it's great that the government is creating legislation that tackles the root of the problem. Japan is consistently ranked as having one of the best healthcare systems in the world. All Japanese residents are required to have health insurance either through their employer or the national health insurance. The good thing is that medications such as antidepressants are very affordable. The not so great thing is finding a doctor who can adequately diagnose and prescribe the proper medication. Because of the nuances in Japanese language, it also depends on the patient's ability to adequately describe their psychological problems. Descriptions of the heart can be interpreted as either psychological or physiological. Mental health counseling is generally not covered by the national health insurance, and sessions range between 10,000 to 20,000 yen. That's around $135 per hour. The average Japanese person is not going to seek therapy because they think it's unnecessary, and the expensive price tag further dissuades them. 4 therapy sessions in 1 month could cost 80,000 yen, which is the monthly rent for some apartments. Why would you pay money to talk to someone when you can figure out your own problems for free? According to this paper by researchers at the University of Tokyo and funded by the Japanese government, the top reason for delaying mental health care was because participants wanted to handle the problem on their own. The cultural attitudes of perseverance without complaint and not wanting to burden people with problems is definitely related to their reluctance. Following the Great East Japan earthquake of 2011, which triggered a tsunami and nuclear disaster, affected people showed symptoms related to post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, and anxiety. Mental health care teams were dispatched to provide kokoro no care, which means care of the heart. The concept originated in the wake of an earthquake in 1995 and was intentionally worded in an ambiguous way to encapsulate a more holistic approach to mental well-being. The word kokoro literally translates to heart in English, but the true meaning is far more significant than the physical organ. It's more like your mind and consciousness, and is a recurring theme in Japanese literature and philosophy. Framing mental health treatment as care of the heart softens the negative attitude around mental illness. Since the pandemic, a group of teenagers and young 20-year-olds routinely gather in the plaza next to Kabukicho Tower, located in Tokyo's red light district. Some of them experienced bullying at school or abuse at home, so they ran away to this area to find solace in shared experiences. The media labels them as Toyoko kids. There have been cases of alcohol and drug abuse and darker situations that involve self-harm self-harm and committing certain acts for money. The government doesn't really do anything about this situation, and let's be honest, the police turn a blind eye to the illegal activities that occur in Kabukicho. Take a walk around Okubo Park at night. If you know, you know. Nihon Kakekomedira is an organization with an office in Kabukicho that offers meals to these kids and anyone in need of refuge. It's supposed to be a safe space where kids can feel supported instead of scolded and eventually offered guidance to make positive changes. In one case, a girl agreed to give up drug use in exchange for piano lessons, which inspired other girls to make similar changes. Other efforts to support Toyoko kids are a group of students from the University of Tokyo who offer study lessons for kids who have expressed interest in education. Some people dismiss Japanese society as robotic and depressed and repressed, but I hope that the historical and cultural context helps explain why East Asians navigate mental health the way that they do. Please remember that what's different to you is normal in other cultures, and what's normal to you is different to other cultures. While I completely support and encourage research-based therapy and medical treatment, psychotherapy originates from the West and is inherently Eurocentric. The Asian mind is different from the Western mind. We have completely different cultures, perceptions, thought processes, child development, family dynamics, values, etc. Of course, techniques will continue to evolve, and there are talented psychologists who can navigate different backgrounds. Finding the right match is what matters the most. For some people, it's as simple as expelling bad thoughts from their mind. Regardless of how people cope, I believe that people need to be educated on the differences between mental health and physical health. There is a difference between chest pain and anxiety. There is a difference between headaches and depression. I personally was not aware of these differences as a teenager, and maybe I refused to acknowledge it due to my cultural upbringing and fears of shame. I think that kids should be encouraged to discuss and display their emotions, as that will greatly enhance their emotional intelligence as adults. Perseverance and resilience are valuable to character, but it should not come at the cost at one's mental well-being.